Hey everyone, how's it going? It's evening. Tonight I'm going to be working on some streaming tools. And so far I've tried to avoid doing any of this because, I don't know, streamers, streaming, building streaming tools, I think is a thing that I would not want to do a lot of. But I do have a need that I would like to do. And I think it might be interesting for some people to see something a little different from what I've done in the past. So, in case anyone's unaware, which I'm sure many aren't, switch to live view here. One of the tools that I have on my desk here is called a Stream Deck. And it's a pretty cool tool that is very handy for streamers, but I think it's also useful for people just in general, daily life on their computers, because you can program it to do a lot of really cool things. So let's see. Auto. It comes in 3 sizes currently, and it also comes in a mobile version as well. So we go started. They just show us right away the new. So the traditional one was this 15. I think it's, what is it? Yeah, it's 15 buttons for the standard version. There was a nice thing that showed all the different versions. Maybe it's on the EK page. Yeah, here we go. So this is the traditional one. This is the one I have. They also have a smaller one that only has 6 keys, and then they have a large one with 32. So it gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of how much desk space you want to use, how many buttons you actually think you need. And then they also have Stream Deck Mobile, which you can use on iPhone and Android. And it gives you the same sort of functionality. You still have to run the same Stream Deck software on the computer that you're trying to control. So the only thing you're really buying is not having to buy hardware for it. The software itself, we're going to be taking a look at this quite a bit today. So we're not going to look at this too much right now. But we can look at what my current configuration looks like. So when I look down at my Stream Deck, these are the things that are available. So if I click to, say, chat, you can see that not only does it switch on the Stream Deck software itself, but it actually also switched the OBS scene as well. So I'm going to go back to live. So you can do a lot of really cool stuff with it. If we look around at some of my other options, I have if I pop into video conferencing, that actually triggers a bunch of stuff. So I'm not going to do that. But streaming, this is where I first start. So prep actually opens a bunch of things for me. And I'm going to press it now, and I don't think it's going to break anything, but hopefully I won't have to restart the stream. I'm going to press prep, and what this does is open up the music player, it opened up OBS, and it opened up the Restream chat. So it actually opened those were already open, so it opened them on my mini display under the main display. But you can see it also opened up to the titles page on Restream, because if I don't set these titles before the stream starts, then at least in the case of YouTube, the YouTube video will be given the title of whatever was last. Kind of annoying. So I started to build some of these workflows into Stream Deck itself so that I wouldn't make as many mistakes. If we look at prep, you can get an idea of what this actually looks like. So open Stream Deck, open Restream Chat, open Monster Cat, and open Titles. So those are all the things that it will actually do when I push that button. So there's not just individual things that you can do, but you can also set up macros where you can actually trigger a bunch of different things. If I click Start, you can see that what it does is change the OBS Studio scene to starting soon. It turns off the timer source, and then it actually tells OBS to start and to send my tweet. So it does all of those things as soon as I click start. When I'm ready to be 10 minutes out from when I'm actually going, that's when I click the 10-minute one, and so this changes the scene to starting soon. Should already be starting soon, but this just makes sure it is, and then it enables the timer source. So that's where the 10-minute timer starts down. I got a bunch of the ideas for this particular set of things from Matt Stauffer, so if you want to check out more of this stuff, you can look at Matt's blog. Has something to do with Stream Deck for streaming. Yeah, so he actually had some ideas for setting up a bunch of this stuff. So I've tweaked it a little bit for my own purposes, but this is more or less where I kind of started with my custom setup here. And then once I'm ready to go, I click into solo, which switches me to the streaming profile. And this is where now I'm normally seeing things while I'm actually streaming. So I can switch to the different scenes I need to. This view actually shows me the Twitch viewer count, and this view shows the YouTube viewer count. I'm not actually doing anything with either, well, I'm not doing anything with YouTube just yet. So I'm actually broadcasting there, it's recording stuff, but I'm not actually doing anything with it. But the Twitch view count is pretty nice because it gives me a quick way to see what's going on there. Then I can actually control the audio. So I'm going to cut the mic for a second here. And so, I actually have to click it on the hardware device. So I'm going to click the mic and you should hear me drop out. And you should be able to start hearing me again. Likewise, I can actually kill the music too. If there's some inappropriate music or whatever, I can just turn it off. So I still hear it here, but as far as OBS is concerned, the music's actually turned off now. So I'm going to turn that back on. And then this button is sort of a kill switch. This will stop the stream, and if I click it again, it'll restart. So one of the things that made this really easy and nice to use is that all of my streams all of my channels that I have connected here prior to earlier this week were all, why is it shouldn't be actually showing me this content, there we go, were related to my live code stuff, so this was totally fine. But I'm paying for a higher package on Restream, so I actually have the ability to have multiple streams, and I've been wanting to do some art streaming. The tricky part is that if I want to do the art streaming on Restream, everything on Restream is more or less geared to a single brand or a single account. So in order to make sure I don't, say, start broadcasting code to the art channel or broadcasting art to the code channel, I would actually have to click these on and off correctly. So what I wanted to do was see if I could actually do that with Stream Deck. And so Stream Deck gives you the ability to add additional modules. So you can go to more actions, and this brings up the marketplace, which has a surprisingly small number of packages available. I've installed all the ones that are super interesting for me, but there isn't one for Restream. And so I thought I'd check around, looked online, and I did see that there were a couple of people who actually were doing Restream packages. So we're going to take a look at some of those, but nobody has a complete system. Hey, J-Crew, thanks for joining. Yeah, you have to tell me a little bit more about what kind of things you're thinking about doing with your Stream Deck. I think I remember seeing it on your shelf. So yeah, this is going to be, I don't know how long I'm going to have to do this tonight. I might have another hour and a half or 2 hours. But the actual development of these packages might turn out to be way more than I can handle in one setting. So we'll have to see what that looks like. So yeah, I looked around, and then I also wanted to look at the Restream API to see what's actually available. Well, I'm going to get to regenerate that, of course. And so the limitations for what can be done through the Restream API are pretty, as far as write access, there's not a lot you can do. You can update the channel. So a channel would be like a specific Twitch source. So here we could activate or deactivate a channel. So this is more or less exactly what I want to be able to do. Here it is. I'm going to be going back and forth between these a lot. It's going to be annoying tonight. I'll try to do better. So each one of these things is considered a channel. So right off the bat, we can see that the ability to toggle these should be doable through the API. So again, it's a very minimal set of functionality we can do. Everything's a get, except for patching the channel. So that's good. I'm happy about that. The other thing that we can update, the other thing that we can do patch on, is the channel metadata. So if I want to set the titles of these, I could do that. Now, when I was working on Astrocast, one of the things that I did was build a pretty comprehensive, very personalized set of streaming tools. It talked to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch directly. So I would be able to go and do things like set the title on YouTube or set the title on Twitch. Building that out for every single potential output didn't seem like it was going to be a lot of fun. So even at the time, I'd really hoped that Restream would come up with an API that would let me do that just by communicating with Restream. Because then I'm just communicating with Restream. I don't have to build a Google app. I don't have to build a Twitch app and all of the OAuth dance for every single one of those. So I'm pretty excited about this, provided I can figure out how to make the OAuth work from within Stream Deck. From within the Stream Deck API, because then all I have to do is actually work with the Restream API. The other thing that's interesting about these is that they just recently added this update titles that brings up this one stream or one little pop-up to update everything at the same time. I actually really liked the old version that stream.io/titles. Yeah, I actually liked this a lot better because this allowed me to opt into changing everything, including the description. And the description only works for a couple of the channel types. So YouTube is the only one that I'm doing that it really makes sense for. But if I don't set a description, it doesn't send a description, so it will use the last description that was set on YouTube. That's how YouTube works for some reason. So I pretty much always have to try to set a description now, otherwise YouTube is going to continue to have something weird. But if I look at each individual channel here, you can see that I can actually tweak the title for Twitch manually. For this stream, I can also set its category, and for YouTube, I have a little more flexibility as well. Okay, so here, it even gives you this warning. If you add a new title for YouTube, it'll come up on upcoming streams. And here you can see there's a description. So Twitch has a category, and YouTube has a description. So I asked around on the Restream Discord server, and it sounds like I should be able to set both title and description if I need to. So those are two of the things I was thinking about using the API to do. I was also sketching out some other bits of information that could be interesting for us. So give you an idea here, I'm going to switch to That's a bigger sketch of sort of my proposed hypothetical buttons that I want to do, and then also some additional items that would be used for showing information, so more like viewer counts and things like that. Because if we look at the portal docs, we should be able to see the streaming updates. And here is another interesting thing, that we can get updates on each individual stream. This stream updated is the incoming stream. So I would be able to see what bitrate I'm actually streaming at, the frames per second, how many frames I'm losing, and also the dimensions. So these would all be things that we could highlight on like one key. Like one key on the Stream Deck could be the bitrate. It could be the packet loss rate. Any of those things that might be interesting to you to just have at a glance, you'd be able to see that from here. We could probably do some complicated things like change the background color of the key if, say, the bitrate drops too low, or if the bitrate turns to 0. So there's a lot of really interesting potential like analytics or just like real-time status stuff that you can do as well. Also, there's outgoing stream updated. So this would be, for example, when I start OBS streaming to restream.io, it will then create an outgoing stream to each of my channels. So every one of these channels that gets updated on the way out, I could track that if I wanted to. So I could have a source status button. So I could name it, say, Twitch, and then assign it specifically to the Twitch channel, and then I could get the connecting, disconnected to show up on the Stream Deck, so that you could look down and see, oh, for some reason my Twitch disconnected. YouTube's still streaming, but I can see the Twitch disconnected. Without having to look anywhere else, without having to look at Restream, it would just be on the Stream Deck for you. And then there's a couple of other events here, like delete outgoing. I think this happens when you stop streaming. Yeah, so I think this is when you stop the stream. Oh, I gotta switch back here. So yeah, so this is the stream deleted. This is the incoming stream updated. So this would be the first one that I talked about, and then outgoing stream where it's connecting, connected, disconnected. And then status updated. This is the one where the stream information comes back. So this would be Twitch reporting back some information about the stream. So here's some interesting things we could get, like viewer count. We could get the stream, or the actual title that Twitch says it has for this particular stream. The number of stream views, whether or not it's online, follower count, those sorts of things. So I think these are all, some of these may actually depend on whether or not the platform behind the channel works, because I think that like game title, for example, might be something that is only supported by Twitch or a handful of other things, but not YouTube. Or maybe if it happens to, I think YouTube has a gaming service as well. So in that case, maybe it'll have a game title. And then viewers versus followers. Some of those may make more sense for some rather than others. So this could be useful for creating like channel online, channel number of viewers. So right now I have my Twitch viewer thing coming directly from Twitch, but I could actually get this via Restream, which would actually be pretty useful, because again, I don't have to, I wouldn't have to go in and create a Twitch app that's listening for Twitch's webhooks, and also use YouTube's, listening for YouTube's webhooks when things get updated. Actually, YouTube, I think, you have to do long polling, which is a lot of fun. So being able to do all of this stuff through the Restream API is actually going to be very, very handy. So I guess the real question is, how easy is it going to be to build something for Stream Deck? And how much do I just need the basic functionality of being able to set the title and the description and be able to toggle these things in sets versus wanting to explicitly make something for Stream Deck. So as usual, I'm probably going to do the hard way first and then scale back once we have a better idea of what we're going to do. So I think the first thing is I want to kind of walk through what the SDK looks like. So the plugin architecture that they have is you have an instance of a we're going to do JavaScript. There's going to be I think there's C++, Objective-C. I'm going to use JavaScript, so if I talk about this stuff from now on, just assume it's talking about a JavaScript app and replace JavaScript app with your favorite language. And there's probably a way to do that as well. So each one of these plugins is actually an instance of a JavaScript object that is listening for events and emitting events. There's a manifest that explains the information that the plugin contains, so things like which kind of keys it has, what the keys should do or say, maybe which assets to use, that sort of thing. There's some HTML code, so it's either going to be, well, there's going to be code. It's either HTML or binary. There's a property inspector, which is the more complicated things down here. This is a property inspector. So if you look at, say, Twitch viewers, this is the property inspector of this particular instance of the plugin. And then assets, so that would be like things like images and things like that. Let's see what else might be important here. So I don't think we are going to worry too much about like the coordinates and things like that. It's 0, based. None of the plugins that I want to create or none of the icons that I want to create need to be aware of where they are on the app. But there are additional things you can do with the Stream Deck that can be kind of fun, like building a game. I think one of the sample games is like a minefield game or minesweeper game, or like memory, those sorts of things where you can click a button and then click another button, and it'll show you which things are under there, and then they'll hide if they don't match, and then you have to remember to do it again later, or remember where they are later. So this grid coordinate system might be important for some people, depending on what you're going to build, but we're not going to do anything with that. Communication, this is the thing that's, I think, is probably going to turn out to be really confusing for me. There's a lot of different ways that the plugin can actually communicate with the property inspector, and that is probably more easily seen here. Like if I look, I can see here that there are possible for multiple Twitch accounts that can go, or I can click add new, and if I click add new, it's going to bring up basically a little JavaScript window that opens the Twitch login screen to add an additional account that will then come back here. So these are the types of things that I feel like get really hairy pretty quickly here. Yeah, so these are going to be things that we'll probably pay attention to. I think we'll start out with the manifest, though. The manifest talks about, like I said, these are the actions that are available, and the actions are the things on the right here. So each one of these things is an action. So some of the actions are like Twitch viewers, and then there's some that are a little more complicated, like world time. This is one I downloaded just to see what it's like. So you can see the property inspector here is quite intense. It has a lot of things moving. It controls what is going to show up on the globe. Show city's name on the button. So yeah, all of these things are sort of like tied together. So this is an action on the side, and then within that action, the action has a property inspector. You'll also notice that this time doesn't have more than one state. But if you look at anything that has a toggle, like zoom here, like muting zoom, you'll see that it actually has two states. And this is something that I'll have to look up as well. One is the off state and one is the on state. So anything that can potentially be toggled, the action here is going to have to be able to say that. So you can see that it says states. So default image, middle, font size, it talks about how it actually looks. So it's going to define multiple states potentially for, especially for the channel toggle, is probably going to have an on state and an off state. See what else is in here. Icon states. Yeah, so each action can have one state or two, on or off. So this is the one that we're going to have to probably pay attention to in some cases. OS, you need to be able to define which OS this actually supports, the specific plugin supports, and which minimum version, I believe, of the Stream Deck SDK or the Stream Deck app itself. Also has the ability to monitor apps. I'm not going to go into this too much because we aren't going to need that. But for example, there's an example app for communicating with Apple Mail. And so like this one is going to be communicating with the Mail app to be able to look at it, to see if it's open, to see if it's closed, to see what its state is, that sort of thing. So events received. Events received after calling get settings, and then global settings. So there's two separate types of settings. I think there's settings for a specific object. Get settings API. So this is for retrieving the persisted data stored for that action, or for that instance of that action. Whereas the global settings would be something that is for everything related to that plugin. So if I want to use the example of, say, Twitch, if I look at the Twitch one again, but these accounts, the list of accounts is probably going to be a global setting. So if I have the ability to log into a Restream account and track that Restream account, that's probably going to be a global setting, so that if I pull out a couple of different instances of the Restream, like different actions, like if I have 3 toggles across the top for each of my channels, I want to be able to not have to log into Restream for each one of those actions. I'd want to just do the first one, and then for the other 2, select the Restream account. Event sent. So this is there anything that we are actually calling out? So open URL, I believe this is what we do when like when the Twitch thing popped up, the Twitch login, that's actually opening a URL. Image, show alert. So this is if something fails, like there's a couple of times where there are a couple of actions that can fail that I've tried before, where like if you press something and it expects a certain app to be there, it'll pop up and say, hey, it's there. If it's not, for some reason, you'll get like I can't remember if it's like a upside down yellow triangle or a red exclamation, something along those lines. So you can actually ask it to show an alert. Show OK will, I think it's like a green check mark in a circle or something like that. So anytime that you want to like give feedback that something's actually happened, you can use those sorts of things in a more consistent way. Say send payload to property inspector. My guess for this is as soon as the application has finished doing something in the little pop-up window that it creates, this is the mechanism that you can use to send it back to the property inspector. So after I go and create a new account with Twitch, it'll actually send down the new Twitch account credentials, or at least the ID and the token and whatever, to be stored in global cache or global settings. But that's the action's job to do that. The property inspector doesn't. The thing actually doing the request to get the OAuth credentials from the server in the little pop-up window, its sole job is just to give information back to the property inspector, so that the property inspector can do everything it needs to do. Switch to profiles. I don't really know if we're going to need that. Set settings. Yeah, so this is sort of the basic version. So this is setting it for the opaque value. That's something that was mentioned elsewhere. This is apparently some combination of coordinates and probably the action data, or at least the action identifier. But we're not supposed to rely on it, but we are supposed to pass it around a lot. So this is the thing that would represent a specific instance of an action on a specific key. So if we see that coming up later, I want to make sure that we talk about that. Getting settings. Get the feeling this is all supposed to be highly asynchronous, so we send an event get settings, and then we listen for an event sent settings or receive settings or something. So we did see events received earlier. So I'm not going to get too tied into those just yet. Registration. So this is the thing that actually makes the plugin, or that makes Stream Deck itself be aware of the plugin. So there's a little dance that it has to do. I think this is more or less boilerplate. A lot of it has to do with generating the WebSocket connection and making sure that that's all working, and then starting to listen to events. Once it does that, I think everything is really ready to go. Stuff is connected, register the property inspector. Yeah, so I don't know what we're gonna have to do with that. This looks really complicated to me. Property inspector we've talked about a few times. The interesting thing about this is that apparently it's all just HTML. It's using Flexbox. So as long as we follow a few naming conventions or not naming conventions, but these actual classes that exist, shouldn't be too hard to create these little things, these little actions with their property inspectors down here. You might notice that I keep going up here to configure Stream Deck. At least on Mac, as soon as I click elsewhere, it hides. So I'm not just being ridiculous here. Well, unless there's a setting that I've missed. But there, it is one of the things that's been difficult working with Stream Deck is as soon as, well, you know what? I don't think it actually goes away. Yeah, so it doesn't actually go away, but I can't fan tab to it. So for all intents and purposes, unless it's visible on the screen, which I'm going to do that now because that's going to make our life easier. Unless it's visible on the screen, you can't actually hide it. So let's see here. We'll just leave it up for now because we keep talking about it. So adding elements, supported types, so there's fields, password, email. So almost all of these have form fields, and that's most of what these things do. The exception would be like this world time clock thing. This is the only one I've seen with more stuff like, hey, check out my other projects or whatever. These radio buttons are way more complicated than a lot of the other things that I've seen. So it looks like they're taking more advantage of some of these file upload. That's interesting. Here, progress. Yeah, I don't know where we would use most of this, but... And then they show examples of each specific type. So you can see what the required attribute does. You can see what is file patterns, I think. Oh, any kind of pattern, I guess. So yeah, you can specify that something should be an IP address. So yeah, so there's a lot of stuff in here, and I don't really foresee us needing to do a whole lot with this. Okay, yeah, so this is actually showing some alignment things where you can actually make it look a little bit nicer, which is kind of cool. But I'm not going to look at those too much more. So creating your own plugin. This is where things get fun. They basically recommend going into the plugin directory and copying one of the plugins and just renaming the folder to something else. And then we can edit the manifest JSON, change the UUID, and we have our own plugin. Which isn't going to be probably the most fun way for me to do this. So I think I want to do something a little bit more than that. This debugging stuff I'm going to have to remember to come back to because I really feel like I'm going to need to do that. I did already enable the debugging because I kind of did a little bit of this before. So I can look at, say, the... or did I actually use that somewhere? Yeah, so the Philips Hue stuff I installed because I just kind of wanted to see what this looks like. And so this is actually really close to what I think I would want to do with the Restream stuff. So no bridges, add new, it actually pops up. And this is using, I think it's the built-in, not built-in, but the first class Meet Hue JavaScript library. So it apparently will actually go ahead and discover bridges somehow. But I didn't do it yet because my bridge is in the basement and I'm not going to go down and do that. But this is probably a really good reference for us because I think it does a lot of the things that we need to do. But at the same time, I also don't want to start out too complicated because this looked like it was actually a fairly complicated set of things. So it's maybe on one of these others it talked about getting a really basic version of this. And property inspector. Okay, so the Stream Deck template you can download from GitHub is a good starting point if you want to get started really quickly. So I think that's where I'm at. Let's go ahead and see if we can get this downloaded. Yeah, okay, so features, JavaScript, cross-platform, download, clone the template, replace all occurrences with that, with me, check template with your plugin name. Okay, cool, so let's go ahead and see if we can get this going here. That's not what I meant. Let's call this so. let's actually just follow these. LS, I think. So this is actually this release file. I don't think we need. Not going to worry about that for now. So I'm showing my brain age here. I learned this command way too long ago, and so this is how I do things. And I'm pretty sure this is like way simpler with sed or awk or both or whatever, but yeah. So we're gonna replace this with what it did. All right, so here, okay, EF, and it looks like it's using the name of everything correctly, at least there. So I think it's doing what it's supposed to. Okay, so okay, and then Stream Deck template or plugin name. Okay, cool. All right, well, we'll call that good for now. The question is, how do I test it now? If I have this in this directory, I'm gonna stand up real quick here. Hey there, Warpig. Yeah, sure. So Warpig's wondering about the difference between Laravel deployment projects. So the three mentioned here are Envoyer, Laravel. Yeah, it's just Envoyer.io. Okay. So Envoyer is one of the tools mentioned, and Forge another, and DigitalOcean. So I think we'll start with DigitalOcean real quick. DigitalOcean is, if you're familiar with AWS, it fills the same sort of role. It is the platform as a, it's not really platform as a service, it's more like infrastructure as a service. So if you spin up EC2 instances on AWS or DigitalOcean, you'd spin up Droplets. Yeah, so Warpig says it's a cloud, and yeah, it is more or less a cloud. So their product offering is Droplets, which is scalable virtual machines. They have managed Kubernetes, app platform. I think this is similar to, I can't remember exactly. Spaces is similar to combination of S3 and CloudFront. Databases is sort of like RDS. Or you can look at it from the context of compute, databases, available for tools, networking, and storage. So DigitalOcean is just I want to say it's a more accessible cloud than AWS is. At this point, AWS is sort of a monster to me. There's a bunch of people who are really awesome at it. For me, sometimes it's just really overwhelming. DigitalOcean seems to just be a little more friendly. And I think the pricing is maybe a little more straightforward as well, though I don't really know where they match up on pricing anymore. So what Laravel Forge does is Laravel Forge gives you the ability to provision VPS systems and manage them. So DigitalOcean, yeah, exactly. DigitalOcean is pretty cheap. The thing is, though, it's just $5. Sure. I think that where AWS kind of falls down is I'm pretty sure AWS is that inexpensive or even more inexpensive. DigitalOcean just does a really good job of making the pricing more visible, so people are less kind of in the dark about it. So they see $5 for a server, great. Whereas a lot of the AWS stuff, I think, is usually shown like in cents per hour, things like that. But I know that they keep changing everything all the time, so maybe that's not true anymore. But what Forge does is lets you easily spin up a brand new server of a certain size with, pre-built versions of PHP that actually work well with Laravel, choosing specific versions of databases and things like that. And it's all geared around being able to deploy or to create a server that is well suited to host Laravel applications. And then on each server, you can have different, a really good example. Yeah, let's do Sparkling Desert for me. Right now, this has a bunch of sites on it that are running PHP 5.6. So I've been pulling these projects off for a while now. So it installs anything that Laravel project needs to run. Does it look at the project and check for libraries installed? No. So it doesn't do that. It installs it tries to provide the basic types of things that you might need. So you end up with a scheduler. So it's just managing cron, but it's pre-configured to make it easy for you to see how you would run, say, artisan schedule run. Daemons would be other things that you would probably set up yourself, like, hey, Horizon. These are all things that are sort of built into Laravel already. For logging, it lets you view the log files because it knows where the log files are probably going to be. Let's see, PHP. You can actually, so this is one of my oldest hosts that I've been slowly trying to migrate everything off of. What else? Database. So you can actually create databases, manage users, change passwords. Something about Redis down here as well. So Forge's job is to give you the tools that need to be there that are mostly like services. So like Redis, MySQL, or Postgres, or what other things it has on it as well. But it's basically just managing that infrastructure. It does have code deployment things. So if we look at a specific site, so if I look at this older version of Ninja Girl, So this is the deployment script, so that if you push new stuff to a specific branch on GitHub, it'll automatically connect everything for you. So it's still doing composer install, it's still doing, artisan migrate, it's doing npm install, everything that you might need to do. But if you need specific plugins installed or extensions on PHP, you would actually have to SSH into the server and make sure that those are installed manually. So it's still sort of still just a VPS. It's like a step between managing your own bare metal VPS and also, hold on here. It's sort of a step between running your own bare metal VPS and also something like Heroku or Laravel Vapor, where you're more hands-off, where you're just telling it what the data is that needs to be deployed there, and it builds everything for you. So yeah, it is still nice. It gives you a little bit of flexibility in that you don't have to manually provision these things and install PHP and make sure that you're getting the right version of like database dependencies or setting up Nginx or setting up Let's Encrypt or any of that. It handles all of that for you. So that's kind of the space that Laravel Forge covers. Envoyer is a completely different set of tools. It's the fancy version of just logging in or it's a fancy version of just doing git pull and composer install. That means any given VPS comes with nothing, LOL, for Laravel. Yeah, if you go to DigitalOcean right now and provision a brand new droplet, you are going to get a completely brand new instance of Ubuntu or whatever you have installed on it with nothing else. Maybe you can SSH into it and then you can do apt-get install everything. But what Forge does is it makes sure that you have all of the dependencies that you need for a somewhat modern PHP application. So you'll get things like Redis for queues, Redis for cache, also being able to do Let's Encrypt out of the box, so you can get security stuff for free. Yeah, definitely. Installing everything is a lot of work. So that is really the place that Forge shines. It lets you manage a box more easily because it manages a lot of the basic things for you. But it's not like cPanel in that it changes everything. It's still just using like a stock Ubuntu or stock whatever OS it's using these days, and just running the right apt-get install commands. It's not like completely overhauling the server. Like if you get one of like the big virtualmin and cPanel and webmin, like if you get a virtual host somewhere set up with those and you install those tools on it, it changes. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that get installed that are specific versions, and it can be difficult to manage those. Vapor does everything. Let's do Envoyer first. Envoyer is going to Envoyer's big thing is atomic deployments. So if I look at, say, Ninja Girl, what this does is the deployment hooks are a lot more complicated. So rather than just cloning it and installing it in place, it actually creates a brand new directory, clones everything for the right version in that directory, runs composer install in that directory, runs tests if you needed to, and then only switches over the new application, or it only switches over the application to that new directory if that is all successful. So there's a lot of stuff that Envoyer does to make the deployment process safer for multiple hosts. So that's the other thing, is that right now I only have one host here. But if you have, say, 5 front-end web servers that all need to be deployed on the new code, and sort of like as a set, you would actually be able to manage that a little bit easier with Envoyer, because Envoyer would actually like keep the deployment together, and you'd see how, like, which of the servers it actually worked on, which ones it didn't. So yeah, I think that the Envoyer is something that I've used on projects that are a little more critical. Either they have e-commerce or things like that, where you really don't want to have the code to be in an inconsistent state if the install fails. Here, if something fails, it just completely goes away. Let's see if I can find an example. Deployments. So this is... I don't know if I'm going to be able to find a failed deployment. Not on anything I can actually... Sure. No. Yeah, I can't show any examples of a case where something actually failed. But it would let you know, and if say composer install fails or npm run prod fails on Forge, you're kind of just stuck because the code's already been checked out in place on the server. So that's why this is more of a higher end deployment tool. Forge is more, it's for more easygoing projects, I guess. If you have an actual production system for like paying clients, Envoyer is a better solution there. Vapor is it's closer to, it's closer in field to something like Heroku. Yeah, definitely Warpig. Envoyer does more complicated things. It is a very it's a very specialized tool on top of what Forge does for automatically deploying things. So you don't need both. If you're using Forge, you can just use Forge. You can do the deployment tools with Forge. It's great. But if you need something more robust and less failure prone, or at least can recover better from some kinds of failures, Envoyer is a better solution. Vapor feels more like it's the platform as a service, where you just push your code, just the actual Laravel repository, and it just deploys it. So you don't ever have a server. Its big thing is serverless. Yeah, serverless. Serverless is kind of a buzzword. It's really neat what it is. It doesn't really matter to you necessarily. I wouldn't use Vapor just because it's serverless. I would use Vapor because of the deployment workflow and sort of the scalability things. The fact that it's serverless is sort of secondary in my opinion. The practical results of it being serverless, though, is that you can't rely on reading local disks or anything being can't rely on anything being within the PHP computing environment from one run to the next, which is very different than PHP users are used to dealing with. What does serverless refer to? So there's something called Lambda that is the tool behind Vapor, and it's sort of, I don't know if they coined it after this, but serverless computing platform. The idea is that you're running a function. So there is no server, you're running a function. So let's say you had a application that converted CSV files into XSL files, or whatever the Excel file format is. you don't need to have a database. You don't need to have authentication or anything like that. You just feed it a file that happens to be CSV, and the output is going to be an Excel file. So what AWS decided to do is they had a bunch of these like single-purpose tools that were too simple to require spinning up an EC2 instance for, just to do that and to manage that process and all of the stuff that goes around with hosting it. So they started to build this functionality, hosted on a web, serverless is only for the web. And that's where this marketing serverless thing is just kind of ridiculous. Of course, there's still a server. Just that you aren't, it's abstracted so far that you aren't aware that there's a server. In fact, there's notions of spinning up the Lambda instance, which means it's spinning up the EC2 instance that is running your Lambda function. So it's called serverless because you aren't managing something that feels like a host. So it is very much in terms of what we're talking about tonight. I just wanted to point out that it does. The big thing that you'll see is that it's a serverless deployment platform. Okay. Focusing on the fact that it's serverless is probably going to make it more complicated than it actually is. What's really nice is that you don't have to go to DigitalOcean and spin up a droplet. You don't have to use Forge to install all of the things for you because it's just there. There is no underlying application. There's no underlying server that you have to configure because Vapor contains everything that you need to know. J. Cruz says, I always explain it as there is no state before and after the process you are executing is complete. Yeah, exactly. So on one hand, that's one of the selling points of PHP, is that it doesn't have state. So there's a whole class of problems that you don't have. You have with other languages where you have a long-running Java process. There's a greater chance of memory leaks long-term if the same actual process is running forever. But at the same time, a lot of PHP developers also rely on things like writing to files for cache, or looking for uploaded files on disk, because hey, you upload it and I stored it in /temp/foo. I come back later in a different process, I'm going to go look in /temp/foo, it should be there, right? But not in the case of serverless environments, because each individual instance of your application boots up in its own container. You aren't necessarily going to have access to anything that you put on disk. And that's true for even environments like Heroku. So I like to think of Laravel Vapor as closer to Heroku, because it sidesteps this whole serverless notion. So I don't think Heroku ever went full, we're serverless. That was never their thing. They talked about dynos and complicated things like that, but they didn't try to make a big deal about it being serverless. They made a big deal about each application needing to be stateless, which I think is another way to say what Jake Ruth was saying there. So yeah, my website is hosted on Vapor. And so the nice thing about it was, if I look at Beau Simensen, actually give me 1 second here, I want to make sure there's no credentials. I don't think there are. Yeah, there aren't. So the only thing that I had to do for my Laravel application to work on Laravel Vapor was create Laravel Vapor.yaml. Created a production environment. I eventually had to tell it what my domain was, told it which database to connect to, tell it how much resources it needs. I the command that needs to run in order to install the application or to build it, and then the command that should run after it's been deployed. And that's it. I don't have, like, I'm not telling it to use Nginx. I don't have to care if it's using Nginx or anything else behind the scenes. So that's kind of the beauty and also horror behind these sorts of platforms, is that it does a lot for you, but it also does a lot for you. That means that occasionally nothing will change on your application and it will break. And you don't necessarily know why, because you have no control over the underlying infrastructure. So this thing here that says runtime Docker, I think that's using Dockerfile. .production.dockerfile. So it's using Laravel Vapor PHP 8. So if somehow the Laravel team changes what Vapor PHP 8.0 is tagged as, maybe they removed a dependency somewhere or add something new that conflicts with something, that would be an issue, because the next time someone visits my website after that, they're going to fire up a brand new instance of the container using the brand new image that they've built, which means that the environment underneath my application has changed without me doing anything. In fact, without me literally doing anything. It's just going to run it on its own, and all of a sudden I have broken files and I don't know why, or broken pages and I don't know why. So yeah, Warpig says sometimes you need more control over things. Yeah, so I'm using Vapor for some projects that I have very specific use cases for that I know fit within what Laravel Vapor can do. The only thing that I've had in the past would be actual long-running processes. Okay, so Warpig says, last question, is it worth it to try Forge and DigitalOcean at first? Yeah, totally. I think it is. I think that you can't lose a whole lot from using Forge to manage your own DigitalOcean droplets for a bit. If nothing else, you get more exposure to how Forge works. I don't know if you're already doing anything with VPCs. It sounds like maybe you aren't, but maybe I'm making incorrect assumption there. But it would give you a good way to actually experiment with running a VPC, sort of learning how they work, how you can access them, how you can recover from them when they break, that sort of thing can be kind of fun. But yeah, and then you'll also be able to see sort of what you can do with Forge, and maybe you're going to love it. I mean, that might be what, maybe that's all you need. I know a lot of people use Forge. I know a lot of people like Forge. So I think it's totally a legit thing to try to do. Okay, so I'm going to switch back, if that's all right. Thank you for the questions. We're big. I'm going to switch back to where I was because let's see how far I can get. It's already 8:45 my time, so I might not be able to get too much further. So Stream Deck K testing locally. Warpig says, I hope so far deployment has been a headache, and that was awesome. Oh, great. Yeah, depending on what you have now, definitely any of these solutions are going to be a huge step up from creating your own VPC and trying to build your own workflows. Like, I tried to do that for so long, and I think it was Capistrano. Capistrano is probably the closest thing to what Envoyer does. Envoyer uses the same technique of having a releases directory with directories named after the timestamp, and then a current link, I think it is. But the first time I've seen anything like that was with Capistrano. And so I think that running this locally was a pain. Not locally, but like managing Capistrano on my own with any sort of like Git webhook thing before GitHub. It was awful. So yeah, any of these tools are probably going to make your life deploying applications a lot easier than it was before. Okay, so Fits and Friends Stream Deck Toolkit. Create your own plugin. So I don't. I wonder. I'm going to pull up Stream Deck here and see if my options are for creating or bringing stuff in. So I think I can import things. Maybe it's from more action. Popular. Huh. Well, I do know that I can open it. So, how do I? Plugins, repository. All right, so I think what I need to do is probably try Symlink, because why not? It told me, I think it'll tell me which directory on Mac these things. Plugin. Here we go. If this actually works. No such file or directory. Great. Profiles v2. Awesome. Oh, no, there's a plugins directory. Why does that not work? No such file. Must be something weird about. Okay, so SD plugin. Auto Twitch. Deck. What did I call mine? That's interesting. Actually, I have to rename it here. Okay, so it's diff. Must be something special about SD plugin as a directory name. Alright, let's see if I can restart Stream Deck. So we've got OBS Studio, soundboard, props on the YouTube Control Center, custom. I wonder if that's Streamlabs, Q. This might be the new action happens here. Okay, yeah, so I think it is because it's got the template there. So, go in. I don't know how easy it is to reload this, or if I just have to keep starting Stream Deck. I'm guessing starting stream. That'll be fun. Okay, so let's get right in here. They said open up app.js because this is where all of the fun stuff. But before I do that, let's look at manifest. What else we can change? All right, example action. So if it's using action image. Action. Yeah, so that's the icon. That makes sense. So tooltip. This is an example tooltip. Give me. Where do I see a tooltip? Yep. Oh, this is the only action in the plugin. See that particular an example tooltip doesn't show up over here, but this one does. Full time, full center. Author. Sample description. Icon. Huh, this actually doesn't look like the right one. I'm going to close this. I'm going to remove this symlink and see if could have been there because custom shows up. But it's, yeah, so it's confused now. There must be something else going on in here because it does not at all look like I expected it to. The name, I feel like should have been something. so I'm going to link it again. Okay, so templates. Click me. The window input here. All right. There must be something else driving this part. Even though it looked like this is. I'm also confused why it's showing up under custom. I assumed it'd go up like where Hue did, or bar rater. I should check bar raters. Test. Low, middle. Play the local time in cities around the world, so that's what their tooltips. I wonder if this is some localization stuff. Sample tooltip, but the English version is only action. Plugin, the name is action. Let's do name is foo. Yep, there we go. Okay, so that makes sense-ish. So it is localized, and that is why things are. That's really confusing though, because it doesn't seem like it should be. But hey, it is what it is. Okay, so let's keep looking at bar rater's code to see authors bar rater, categories bar rater. So I think this is. I think that's how we can get it into at different locations. Query isn't listed here. Yes, it's under. Let's try this. Category. What was it? Ah. There we go. Cool. All right, so we're getting there. Which I know it's not super awesome, but at least we're able to start making some meaningful changes on some. So let's see. I think I'm going to get rid of this German. Because I don't need to make it more complicated right now. What I want to do is see now if it still works without anything. Yeah, okay, so it's still going to use everything, except now it's using the stuff actually in the manifest. So, okay, that's cool. All right, so All right, so I want to sketch out on actions here some of the actions that we're actually going to. I don't know if we have the ability to create a break between them. Looks like not. All right, so let's do name of this one. We'll do channel dates. Leave that. Tooltip will be. Let's see what the tooltip was for Stream Deck. No, OBS for the audio for record. So start, stop recording. So let's do tooltip. Enable. Oh, we'll do toggle channel. And I'm using toggle for the word here because that's what they're using. Toggle off and on. I think consistency there would be good. So we'll do toggle channel off, on. And so let's call restream channel. So this was the other thing that I want to do, is be able to set a aggregate. So I can say create a button and specify Twitch Beau Simensen and YouTube Beau Simensen. And if what it will do when you push the button is check each channel, and if the channel is one of the ones that I've specified and it's off, turn it on. If it's not and it's on, turn it off. So toggle, basically I want to be able to say that for this particular Stream Deck instance, when I press this button, I want to turn on all of Beau Simensen stuff, and turn off anything else. So in that case, it would turn off Beau Simensen art. Likewise, if I did the same thing on the Beau Simensen art Stream Deck instance, it would turn on Beau Simensen art for Twitch, and then turn off Twitch Beau Simensen and YouTube. So it's not a toggle. It's asserting that only those specific items are on. So we'll do channels, and the tooltip is so it is toggle of channel off and off. A really long tooltip. So I don't know if that's gonna even work there. So. Alright, so channel. Putting all of the channels off. Okay, so I feel like I can probably make that distinction a little better when I'm actually in the property inspector later. So that's one of the things that I've actually sketched out. But okay, so we've got those two. Let's go ahead and add another one. And for this one, I want to check what the naming is. So this is going to be some of our other ones for the visuals, like FPS and things like that. Incoming stream. Okay, so we'll do name. Play. Coming stream bitrate. Green. Loss. Loss rate. Status. Possible we might want to combine some of these, sort of like how the world time one has the possibility to show different things on here. Possible we wouldn't want to actually create individual icons for each of these, and instead have something that sort of has an aggregate view of the status, so it could have the FPS, the bitrate, and the loss rate on it, but for now we'll leave it. Rates. So this status. Okay. So those are for the incoming stream. And then we need channel status. So channel status to channel viewers. Display display. I think is what this says. So Twitch viewers. Go live viewer count. Okay, so we'll just go live. This. Start stream deck. Got it. I'm gonna move this. Do I get to move that higher? Oh, yeah, I can. Okay. I want this higher because stream up at the top. Cool. Alright, so we've done a bunch of these things now. I'm gonna delete this. This will crash. I don't want it to crash anything, but what happens if I drag one of these? Okay, so it's still doing the other stuff. It's still... I think that must mean the property inspector is always the same. Which is interesting. So states, I'm going to do 2 states for this, because this is a toggle. And I'm going to do 2 states for this. And that should make these two be very different from the rest of them. if I pull stream bitrate down, okay, so it only shows one here, is what we should do, but for any of these two, should see 2. Okay, cool, so that's working, awesome. It doesn't know which one is pressed, it doesn't really care, I guess. But this is what we'll end up having to do to distinguish between when a stream is online versus off, or when a channel is online. That's working. Okay, so we've done those things. Let's see if we can figure out the rest of this here. Okay. App.js will appear. These are all tying into action, funded receive settings. Cool, so what I can do here then is payload settings, probably console log settings, setting the title based on everything. Output input element. Oop. So it's looking at settings. Watch the key on your stream deck. It got a new title. So this only works if settings getting the settings. Okay, so that's above, do thing. Something. Okay, so that's making sure it does something. That's showing up. Cool. Huh. That is. This was the thing that was supposed to be letting me do the beat. You relaunch Stream Deck, open. Huh. I know this worked before, because we did this before. Run it again. Maybe there's something weird going on, because I've rebooted. No, I didn't reboot since then. Try one more time. Interesting. There now. Okay, so we can go to. Okay, so en.json. So it is looking for that. So there must be something somewhere asking. So I'm going to press this button. And nothing. Okay. Let's go back up to make this be channel, because channel is what it was originally. Look at Okay, so let's see. Click this. Click here. Clicking the button sends information to your property inspector. Property inspector and watch the console. Yeah, it's not happening. I wonder if it has to do with the fact that I renamed things. Here. Sure, because yeah, I switched a bunch of these. Had to be action dot. See if that makes a difference. If I go back, well, actually, I'm going to go back to just action because I think that was the original version. So if I set a new channel instance here, yeah, actually close, reconnect. If it's a weird timing issue. Connected, reconnect. I'm ready by reopening DevTools. Oh. Alright, so there is now something more interesting happening when this is named action. I'm going to click it now. Okay, so that wiring seems to be working okay. I wonder... Drive to the will appear in other events. I wonder if we have to do this for every single... I wonder if we have to create each action as its own thing. So let's look at the queue example. Yeah, let's see if they follow a similar structure here. Manifest. They have Elgato Philips Hue Power dot color. So this is where I had gotten that notion that this should be like dot channel. So inside plugin, why they have a very different structure. Power action. I think they are probably doing something way more complicated here. They have actions, WebSocket. Yeah, I think this must be slightly more abstract than came in for Property Inspector JS comment. window. This is our actual little property inspector. Foundational stuff. So, I think that's going to be shared by all of them. The way that will work. There. Okay, cool. So I didn't have to reload anything for that, which is awesome. Okay, so that makes sense that we can put these things there. But that does not seem to have anything to do with the action. So, property inspector, .js. Connected to that. What's the thing with JSN? Subscribe to will appear and other events. I'm going to change if I can get this working. Channel name. Vector did disappear. Change it. Ah, so that's probably the DevTools thing. Yeah, so this is when it disappeared. So I click here, appeared, and now it's back again. Appeared. So that's where it's getting that red stuff from right here. So I'm getting the fact now that we probably don't need all of these for every single channel, or for every single thing that we're clicking on. For example, this Twitch one, any of the view or status things that are just returning stuff, they don't actually have any key up things. I don't think. I think will appear. Maybe it needs those, because that might trigger a hey, go look and see what information we have, but also maybe not. Then to plug in. Okay, so go ahead and do this. So we're going to do just will appear. Comment out all of the rest of it, at least for now. And const channel. Did receive settings. Settings. So this looks like something that a lot of them are going to. Payload.set. This example we put in each. Alright, so I'm not going to do anything. We're just going to assume that information. Cache your settings on. Alright, so on did receive settings will set the settings anytime they change. Appear events right before it gets. Good place to set up your plugin and look at the current settings. Cool. Nothing in the settings prefix. Alright, so that's how we got template to show up here. So if there were no settings, or if the settings length is 0, then we set template. So this was already sort of showing what we would do. And then setting the title, still the thing I'm not sure about. So set title. Okay, so I guess title is, yeah, okay, this title, the reason this is a function is because it's actually doing something rather than calling API set title directly. It's doing some logic with it, so that makes sense. Title based on settings, that, and we're not going to do anything with save settings. Up. We actually want to do that. Actually, no, we don't. Yeah, we do. This is the one that we need to use this to toggle. So we're not going to do anything here. On send a plugin from the property inspector. Collection. All right, I'm gonna leave this one here. I think we're gonna need that. Save settings. All right, so we have all to save settings. Nothing's actually calling that. So we have did receive settings, on will appear, and on key up. So let's go ahead and will appear, on did receive settings. Settings. We actually need it. So will appear is sort of the first thing. Did receive settings is on future calls to it. And then we move key up. Oh. Ooh. Alright, so channel is broken. Add channel. Okay, so it didn't do the template thing because it wasn't supposed to. Okay with that. Going to reload DevTools. Pull up. Go. And what happens if I push the button? It should say toggle. Yes. Awesome. Okay, cool. So that's great. We're not doing anything interesting. so there's that, which is awesome. But anyway, so on did receive settings, a key up. Let's do toggle log things. I wonder if it would make sense to do wonder how people merge the global settings and the local settings. I wanted to see what we can do. Receive settings. Global. Events. Because this is going to be where we have to store things. And this is where I feel like global settings. I guess this is probably the easy settings. Yeah, okay, cool. So then here, let's do settings. There we go. Theory. Loaded. Instead. There's definitely something weird about bugger effect of it. Maybe the order I do things in matters. Like if I do it too soon after restarting. Now we should be seeing, okay, this is global settings. What do we got? Regular setting. Happens here by this communicates back what it's going to do. May not be able to do anything and everything. Okay. Okay, so let's see if we can just start hacking some. So on key up, how do I emit events? Title do. Okay, so it calls SD API. Set settings. Okay, context is JSN view. Dot. Let's assume settings false. So settings on is false. I just do that. So we need to do so we are passing in all of settings that we are explicitly setting on to the opposite of whatever on was. So All right, and so getting why some of this other stuff is done the way it was. So when it receives settings, it sets title. Sometimes you have to walk through things, see why other people make the decision. Okay, so on did receive global settings, on did receive settings. We're going to do this dot set title ASN. Likewise, up we're going to this dot set title ASN. Annoying. And then we're going to actually no, we're not going to do that. We're going to call set settings. We're going to rely on receiving the settings. So if we have settings and settings has on, we are going to use the API to set the title with our context to this dot settings dot on or and so by default this should be off when we pull it up, and then as soon as we push the button it should eventually turn off, and we should be able to toggle it like that if all goes as planned. Let's see here. Start. That is not what happened. Alright, so because it didn't actually receive the settings. Not actually settings. Let me confirm that. My guess is this isn't being called. On will appear. It's actually if it has settings. Okay, and that's why this was being. So we'll set it here. So if there's not settings, for the length of settings, this is where we want to set things. So here we're going to not actually test that because I feel pretty confident that famous last words, I know. Let's use, instead of just setting the thing to template, we are going to set our default value. Settings like this. On false. is fine. Prep below. Add some more. Not working. Things. Theory, I should be able to see it. So I'm going to do button press and see if that's still good. On is false. So whatever's going on, this is not. Also possible I have these backwards. Oh, that should actually be working. So it is accepting override from the Silicon Valley. This call appears to be not doing anything. Oh, I wonder if did receive settings only happens if someone else calls it. Like if something else sends that. Either way, we have some new debugging stuff too. Really know why that. Yeah, I have to wait for everything to power up. So we did get an object. So on will appear was the first thing we got. We've got action for channel. Context is event will appear. Coordinates. Settings. On is true. Rename on because it's possible that's a reserved word somehow. So let's do on. All is on. It'd be pretty funny if this whole thing was just because on was a reserved word. Funny in a okay, so I think I've got them all. Close it again. will appear, payload, settings on as true. Okay, cool. So that's being set. That has nothing to do with the value that I set. Payload coordinates settings on as true. So I think that's just saying that, hey, it's on. So it's state 0 versus state 1. So I think key up is going to find this value not exist. I think it's probably going to cause, but it's also very clear that this does not appear to be triggering on did receives, because if it were, so I'm going to press the button. Okay, so toggle still got called. What do we get here? Settings on is true. Don't have any idea where it's getting. And true. What am I missing? Oh. I wonder if it actually did set it once. Try deleting this. It's interesting. If it's fateful in the way that I'm thinking, that's odd. Not odd, but it might explain some of this weird stuff. Okay, so on will appear. Got triggered again. Settings. So settings is empty now. Okay. Press the button. What does settings have now? Settings is still. I need to console log JSON. Alright, I'm going to write this again. Instead of log. So if this gets called, then I need to figure out why settings have passing this. Shouldn't be. Otherwise, if we are calling set settings and this really isn't happening, kind of weird. Possible calling set settings happen, but we should also be required to set it ourselves. Like maybe we can't expect to be able to do what I'm doing here. Maybe the docs would say as much. I just don't know what that functionality, that type of functionality is called. But basically caching it locally before we call it out to someone. Okay, so on will appear, and there were settings apparently. So there it is. So it had persisted, the channel is on. Yeah, so it is actually setting those values, but it's not actually calling the callback here. So I think this is reporting to the API that it is setting these settings, but it must be doing something with the context where if the context of the thing calling set settings is the same as the context of like, I don't know how it would possibly know. It doesn't matter. We'll do this dot, no, dot settings, goals, payload, payload is going settings. Maybe that doesn't make sense. Now, I'll key up to do yes, we just have. Toggle it, then save it so we don't do anything. So anytime we change settings locally, also set setting. Did receive settings, so if we get them for some other reason, then could try to set the title. So everything's happening based on the title. So let's try this. Ideally, this should just start showing stuff. Like we should see it change state, kind of like everything else does. But it didn't. So let's do here. Okay, so there were settings apparently. And then let's do this dot set title. Okay, awesome. So it came up as on. So that's kind of what we had expected. It actually came up relatively quickly, which was pretty cool. So I'm going to push the button, and the button should trigger it to say off. It didn't, which is fine because, yeah, at least partially working now. A little closer than I was before, at any rate. The toggle happened. Toggle on key up. Looking at true. Panel is on is false. Settings. Still needed to come. So yeah, this is why we were calling set title all over the place, because double check here, because it's calling set title everywhere. Yep, on did receive settings, set title on will appear was calling set title. On key up was calling do something, which didn't actually title. But I don't think it was supposed to. Fairly. On send a plugin, save setting. Or called save setting. Oh, you could save settings persistently to string deck. And use an example. Okay. Okay. So this one last time. Okay, so it's off. That's interesting. Wonder what happens if we restart it when it's on. We can try that in a second. Okay, we're going to press off. On. Sweet. Again, off. I'm going to leave it on. And since it's being stored in settings, I think that it should be on when we start it again. It is. Okay, cool. All right, so interesting. So in reality, we are not actually going to be relying on panel is on being set by so I think that on will appear. For setting. In an ideal world, we're going to do. We'd have to explicitly say that every time we want this action to be triggered, it should default to being off. So we're going to do this.settings because we're always going to want to pull restream to find out the status of the channel. This.settings dot channel is on equals false, and then we're going to I think the trick here that in the real world, I can just mark this. In the real world, we wouldn't store this value in settings. I think that's what this is doing here. It's only saving, or rather, it's transferring information from property vector You know what? I'm going to leave it like it is because one of the things that I don't like is if I go back to prep and I come back to solo, sometimes, well, okay, so since they were still active, the Twitch count stayed the same. If that's always the case. Streaming. Oh. Never mind. I think this behavior is just going to work for me. I think that it's fine for the action to play the last known state and wait for an update later to change it, at least for now. That'll be, I think. The other option is to not persist these settings. So keep it, keep another set of settings that would be ephemeral. So and use here. So we'll get the settings. Actually, it makes this a lot easier. So we can do thing at all. We're just going to call set title toggle to change this to a don't call set setting. The title ephemeral else So what this is doing is making this particular part of the value only, or this part of the display only show up in the case that we've ever actually received that value. So that means if there are persistent values, for example, the channel ID, that would be what we would get here. So, for example, settings would include channel ID eventually, but the state of this specific instance of the channel, whether it's on or off, would be controlled in some other way. The question then would be where that would actually come from. So that would be the thing listening for stream events from Restream. It would be triggering data. So for now, we're going to pretend that we're getting that information from the key up. So when I press the button, it's going to set it for us. So this gives us three states. This gives us, we don't know yet. This gives us we don't know yet, and it gives us on or off. Figure out what I think the first button is going to turn it on. My Boolean math is not always very good. We'll see how I'm. Alright, so it did pop up as not available, which is sort of what we expected. My name, and I push the button. Should either turn to true or false, or on or off. Cool. And now, if I go home, streaming solo, remembered it was off, but if we fired back up again, it should be NA. Cool. So this gives us that we're not sure what it is just yet state, and doesn't give you the possibility of saying, hey, this stream is, or this channel is on when it's actually off, or it's, hey, this channel is off when it's actually on. Instead, it would be we could potentially do something very clear to indicate that the channel is currently unknown, or we haven't queried it later. So the only bit I'm not sure about that I want to check, and then I think I need to call it a night because it's a really long stream, is figure out what other events we can send. So settings are fine, but those are more for the persistent storage. So key down is something that comes from here. Parameters did change. Application did launch. That's if we're actually looking at those things. Property inspector, that's when it actually shows up. Event received by the plugin, the property inspector uses to send to plugin event. So pop message, plugin consent, events, alert, set state. Send a payload to the property and plug in. I wonder if we can look at the Switch plugin. Viewers action. I guess any of these would probably good. So we've got for display, analog clock, CPU is written in C++, so I don't think that's typing code right now. Main thing is I want to figure out how action is able to send information back to the how the plugin can send information back to an individual action. Maybe that's the wrong way to look at it. Draw arm. I wonder if it's doing like set timeout. Colors, there's base. This is actually the clock that renders L. Connected. Here will disappear. Console 1. There's no payload, don't do anything. Toggle clock. This is going to be quick to do some stuff. On will appear. Okay, so this is actually creating a clock. Okay, so it is doing an interval. So I'm guessing this as best path to this probably be having each instance of the action its own API client, or access to its own API client to talk to Restream, and then have right. So I might be overthinking this, possibly because. But I think that what we need to have is some way for the plugin, not the action, but the plugin itself to subscribe to the Restream webhooks, or not webhooks, the WebSocket. So look at our Restream developers. These streaming updates come from WebSockets, so we would actually need to create this connection and then have plugin itself have this connection open and then emit events that the various actions. Now that's the part that I might need to do a bit more research because I feel like I don't remember seeing any sort of inner process. I feel like I haven't seen anything where the actions are talking to the plugin. It seems like the actions aren't. To Stream Deck. This is the Hue client again. So actions in context, so power action, color action, then send a property inspector, data, message, looking for, really seems like just conf main.js. Okay, so this is alright, so this is an instance. I'm not sure why it's calling updates. What action? So this is okay, interesting. Okay, so this is creating a new instance. So it is creating a new bridge right here, using the bridge ID and the bridge username and address. And then it's using that bridge to control things. So there is no notion of plugin itself doing anything. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna have to do some more thinking on this, because this, I know that like the Twitch one definitely either this polling or something, but it might just be doing something similar to the analog clock, where it's just looking. If I can find viewers, then be done with this. IRC socket. Oh. Start timer. Define where's action. Go. This looks like it's using different template than what we have. So instance refresh. This. Refresh. Load count. Count ID, no geared. Count. Oops. Yeah, but it's doing polling on its own. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to call it a night. Thank you all for joining. Looks like I have at least one person still watching. Yeah, this was fun and interesting, and I'm hoping that it actually turn out for more than just me. Yeah. So thank you. Have a good night, and I'll probably jump back into this on Thursday. Thanks.